Welcome to looking back 1 year after the darkest days of Gran Turismo Sports penalty system. As I said in the previous video, which still stands for now, I'm not going to be talking about the negatives of GT Sport now. Because ultimately, I've talked about the negatives now since the game came out, and a lot of the negatives are still there, so obviously the strategy that I'm currently doing isn't exactly working. So why not change it up? And part of changing it up was, well, not talking about the negatives that may still be there, and then praising Polyphony Digital for fixing some of the previous negatives. And well, this is one of those videos. This is actually meant to be positive, and even so how positive it has become. In the background, this is from a live stream that I did on March 21st, 2018, of a kart race, which was a FIA race, in which had, well, some pretty competent drivers. Y'all may be able to recognize some of the names here. And I think if I remember correctly, when I specified this race, I said there was about 5 or so of the drivers that were in the top 10 of the leaderboard. This is just the general as live footage, so aka doing the qualifying and all that. The race is on my channel. But I picked this race in general to put as the background because one, it's a whole race, so I can sell something as overlaying too. Well, this was the very end of the quote-unquote Dark Ages. The Dark Ages I'm referring to is update 1.13 and 1.14. That ranged from late January 2018 to late March 2018. A few days after this update, or a few days after this race, there was an update which made stuff not quite as terrible. But, well, to refresh your memories on how terrible it was back then, well, I have a video linked in the description. It's not actually the kart race in general, because that race, I actually did one positive special-tating of it and one negative special-tating of it. The negative special-tating being the factual one, what actually happened. What I put in the description was a straight-up factual one without another take on it, because that's the best one to analyze. Race in general, yeah, there's positives to race, there's fun in race, but the video I have in the description is the straight-up analysis of only the bad parts. That's in the description, that's my analysis as when it was happening. But looking back a year after that, well, to begin with, the worst part of the penalty system back then was even if there's extremely minor contact between two cars in a completely unavoidable racing incident, with literally a 5-second penalty and SR down to not one, but both cars involved. I still believe that the penalty system now is far too bad for me to consider racing in it. Again, I'm not going to go through the negative details because I already have, and I'm not doing that now to try something different. But it's definitely better than what it used to be. Now the penalty system is maybe one driver will get a penalty, and generally the time is less than 5 seconds now. Some of the times, even minor contacts aren't penalties, as it should be in racing. Another of the major weaknesses of the penalty system during 1.13 and 1.14 was the sheer lack of consistency. Meaning there were still some oval races ran in which bump drafting was nothing. It was just plain accepted, like any other tactic in racing, that it doesn't involve another car around. Meaning, while bump drafting, sector by sector, no penalties are given, and the SR goes up sector by sector for both cars. But then in other sections, in 1.13 and 1.14, bump drafting would cause the SR to go down. This still happens now, honestly, but at least one of the changes the PD has done now is it's only one car that's affected. Now it's the bump draftee that has the negative effects. The point of they can even still end up being disqualified from races. I myself have not had this happen, but also I myself have not exactly been racing the most recently, and I'm planning on not continuing to race very much because, well, as I'm saying right now, the penalty system is better. It's only one car involved now that's getting messed up from bump drafting instead of 2, when it should be 0. but it's a step in the right direction. So I will give PD credit. It's better than nothing, but I will also say this. Before the 1.13 update, when two cars were bump drafting on an oval, which is perfectly fine to do, especially on a big oval like Blue Moon Bay, and especially now that we have RevX, neither cars were penalized, as it should be, because that's what it is in real life racing. So it's obvious that PD could do this in the very much past, but at least at this point in the past, they couldn't even do that for either car. So again, to the next issue of this penalty system, and it was essentially impossible to have your SR go up during 1.13 and 1.14 if you're around other cars. This is in the video linked in the description. To be exact, that video was me no longer caring about driver and sportsmanship rating. The reason that I never cared about driver and sportsmanship rating after that update was because that update actually caused my driver rating to get the reset glitch in the positive manner. My driver rating went from about 59,000 to 70,000. So after that point, I didn't care, and I had all right to really not care. It was much higher than it's ever been, and I was happy at PD for that. For all the times they BS'd me in the past, I probably could have been roughly 70,000 if all that BS didn't happen. And lo and behold, I ended up getting reset to that, and yes, I actually did move my DR up after that update ended. Because that update I was at 70,000. But also then low sportsmanship rating, because that's why the reset happened. My sportsmanship level fell below 69, but it was also not below 49, so therefore my driver rating didn't get reset lower. So, even though I had a really high driver rating, I had a weak sportsmanship rating, so the filter was still easy. Therefore, I actually won enough races where I, lo and behold, actually gained it, without any glitches whatsoever, to over 72,000. Because I waited to race then until after 1.14, all that got fixed, meaning 1.15 and beyond. This actually lasted well into the 1.15 update, to the point of, I think it was maybe 1.16, 1.17, to when it actually even dropped below 70,000 for the first time. Now, today, I'm at 58,000. Remember how I said at the driver reset I was at 59,000? Yeah, now I'm at 58,000. So that's why I quit racing now. I didn't have a care in the world about my driver rating when I was at 70,000, because that's what it should have been at the whole time. But now, throughout all the BS area, it's back down to 58,000. And y'all can rank my own driving as you want, but I'll say this. I'm pretty picky about the races that I do for the most part. And the races that I have done, well, a lot of them are on tracks that I have literal world records on. I've proven that on my channel in the past. To top 10 worldwide tutorial videos on. Those are the majority of races I've done. And my driver rating has dropped since then. Doesn't that sound a little bit messed up? Yeah, I think so. And that was all because of the 1.14 having my sportsmanship rating drop to begin with. Where my driver rating and sportsmanship rating would be at this point, if I didn't have it actually reset to have more driver rating points, in theory by default it would be less, because I wouldn't have had that much to begin with, so I would have had a lot less cuss and losing points. But if I would have had my max during that period being about 61,000, then, meaning roughly a year ago, I wouldn't have reached nearly as much in that year, honestly. At this point, meaning March of 2018, I know that's not quite 1 year after, but this update started in February. Just March I made this decision. I just wasn't going to race anymore, period. I was pretty much done. But then I got the driver rating reset glitch, so I had tons of cushion to continue racing. That took about a year to end up leveling off to where it was before the year started. So now I'm not racing, because ultimately at wasn't going to begin with at that point, but then luckily I got to the point in which it blitzed. So, essentially, I was going to quit GT Sport at update 1.14. And we're at this point now, to where, yeah, I'm not racing, but no, I haven't completely quit on the game either. The game's not really worth racing, it's still not good, but it's not to the point in which it's downright unplayable now. This is the point where I'm not having fun playing it. Only one car is getting penalized for bump drafting. The penalties in general are less harsh. You're not getting penalties for just barely having any contact in the corner in which neither cars could avoid. And I said this before too. I think I even said it in this video. Other people were very much agreeing with me at this point. There was a driver who won a GT Academy Championship. It was boycotting the game roughly around this point, saying how this was way too strict of a penalty system and was straight up unrealistic. You know, when a GT Academy champion who made his fame from Gran Turismo games says that the newest installment of the Gran Turismo game is too strict, something's a bit wrong. Roughly 1 year later, though, that same person's still playing the game and seems to be having quite a bit more fun than he was before. So there you go, that's positive. Also in this race, a lot of people in the field were agreeing with me with the penalty system being messed up, because I'll link this race in the description too. The live stream, not the ones I specified, because y'all can actually see this live and then make your own opinions on it. But it's just a downright fact. All of the top 7 or 8 cars, I can't remember the exact number, but all of them had penalties in which they had to delete on the final lap of the race. Each and every one of them in a field that had 5 of the top 10 drivers in the world-class region. Technically back then the regions were split to the point of where it was technically worldwide, because other regions were racing in different races, so technically speaking, region-wide meant worldwide back then. But nonetheless, top 10 in the leaderboards that were listed, 5 of them were in this race. We had all of the top 8 cars in the field, including me, had to delete penalties at the end of the race. So, yeah, that's a slight bit messed up. But the reason I'm showing this race in general is this wasn't even the worst part, too. This was still an incredibly fun race, even with the darkest days of the penalty system. Wins is barely even touching the car meant your race was pretty much over. Until the next car 2 seconds later got a penalty. Not even the next car that hit you. The next car that got bottlenecked from the first 2, meaning me and the other driver, just barely touching each other, and then us both having to delete a penalty. That other car had to drastically do stuff and most likely also got a penalty. So that's very much messed up. Back then it just created such a bottleneck effect that there was no way to end the race in a positive mood. But during the little bits of the race in which, lo and behold, there wasn't a penalty, which was extremely rare, but it did happen, races were still downright incredible. And that's why I did make one positive special taking of this race, because, well, just racing on GT Sport in general is incredibly fun, if it all goes well. And back in this penalty system, the race probably only went well for 3 or 4 laps of this race, maybe? That's how many laps it is. I mean, that's, yeah. Well, that's how many laps it is. I mean, that's in the description. I forgot that I didn't have it. Like, I wasn't actually to the point of the race yet, but y'all get what I mean. That's, I think it was 20-something laps. I can't remember the exact amount, but nonetheless, it's a lot better now than it was in the past. It's getting to the point in which it shows the actual race now, which I'm not really going to show on this, because, well, I already have. I've given my most positive, to my ability's opinion on the race, and my most factual opinion on the race. This is opinion on looking back at all that. that I'm trying to make both positive and factual. Which is a hard thing to do, but I think at least at this point in GT Sports lifespan, it is a possible thing to do. The positivity of it, at least it's better than it was roughly a year ago. The factual part about it is it's still just not fun to play. It's not downright unplayable. Just barely even touching a hair on another car isn't a 5-second penalty anymore, but it's still not quite to the point in which I'm willing to play it. So, here's the motivation to PD. Yes, the game is better, but yes, it can also be made to still be better than it is now. I'm still boycotting in the sense of I just really don't feel like giving PD's negative attention any attention, because all publicity is good publicity because it gives attention. Yes. But I still want to have faith in PD. I'm not saying I do necessarily have faith in PD, I just want to at this point. So I'm still doing the best of my abilities to show it. How long will the boycott, which I don't cover the negativity, continue for? I'm still not going to put an exact date on it. Because since I started this boycott to now, not much has been done positive or negative. But ultimately, I haven't been doing the boycott in this style for all that long. And I know I have no real effect on how the game itself is made. My effect being the general small community that I have more than the game itself. And I understand that. Obviously, I myself am not going to affect how the game is done, but at least maybe, just maybe, I can have somewhat of an opinion on the small community that I do have. So y'all can do whatever y'all think is best for the game. Meaning play it or don't, or try to benefit it by contacting PD, or don't, or just joining a different racing community altogether. I don't really believe in individual racing communities being completely different. I'm sure a lot of the people in the Gran Turismo racing community are the same people in like the Drive Club racing community, for instance. I still believe the Gran Turismo racing community as a whole is the best, even though the game ain't. But I understand a lot of the people are the same people. Just because you may be part of two different communities doesn't mean you're two different of the same person. You're still the same person no matter what. So I'm not really going to hold it against people if they're not exactly liking this game too much. Because, well, I'm not, but I haven't completely abandoned GT Sport yet. Do I really see myself playing it in the future, even with this boycott continuing? If there's like a weekly race at Tokyo Expressway since we're out of loop, then maybe. Or if the next update has massive cool stuff, I'll play it for a bit more. But I mean, even like getting Route X and stuff. That's nice, but I just don't really have the internet capabilities to benefit on any online style events. Which Route X is very much online oriented. Granted, the game has a tutorial, especially Route X. It's kind of boring to race around that offline. Part of Route X is seeing the chaos that online provides, and while I'm at my college, I have Type 3 internet, so it barely connects to anyone. While I'm at home, I have 27 megabytes of internet now, which is apparently still too bad to connect to everyone in the lobby. So basically that means, yeah, I'll cover the monthly updates, but I can't really cover them for all that long just because it's hard to actually get content from it. So that's kind of catch-22 there. It's great that we're getting these updates, but it's hard for me to actually cover it because I myself can't do much with it. So the best I can do right now is look back on what there used to be and see how much it's improved since whatever that point may be. And then what little I can do, explain the positives of that. Hopefully that will work, and for now, it's at least not working. So I'll give that a tentative yeehaw, but for now, my general opinion on GT Sport now is no different than it was when I started this boycott. But I can at least appreciate that it's not what it used to be. Though I am still a little bit angered that it's not what it used to be in terms of even before this update. again, in the closed beta, like I said in a lot of videos, just downright the penalty system seems better than it is now. But it's not at its worst point, so I'll give credit and credit where it's due, as at least they are changing up somewhat. A lot of the changes haven't been for the better, but at least it's not the downright worst it's ever been now. So, again, I'm trying to make this positive and still factual, so the fact of the matter is all things considered, this ain't worth a yeehaw comparing it to the very beginning of the game to now, but it is worth a yeehaw more than it was roughly a year ago. So, yeehaw.